Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode on No, but seriously, let me explain. Hosted by the beautiful, intelligent Earth Angel Lala Davi. This podcast was designed to provide detailed business advice, next level resources, personal credit tips, and relatable relationship knowledge. Be sure to bookmark this page and subscribe because we wouldn't want you to miss any valuable content. And if you're struggling with poor credit, don't even worry about it. Just text Help My Credit to 507-400-3426. That's 507-400-3426. We have live agents standing by to cater to all your service requests. And now that that's out the way, let's make room for what the host has to say. Lala Davi, do your thing, girl.
Welcome to No, but seriously, let me explain. This phenomenal podcast series that will keep you fully engaged with all the tips and tricks that you need in order to be successful, while also providing you plenty of flavor. I am your host, Lala Davi, and today we will discuss monopoly money. Do you really understand who you are in this game of life? No, but seriously, let me explain. As you explore this powerful new journey of life, you will see that there's money laws and smart money moves that will definitely give you tools to help you understand just how you can navigate through this game of life. You may notice that you'll see me explaining things like UCC filings and getting rid of debt as tools for you to use in this game. When we begin to fully help you to understand the use of the monopoly money stuff and how to be in charge of your own financial future, be sure to take some mental notes. I want you to really listen in just to discover who you are and understand your financial potential as your journey begins. Do you really know who you really are? What I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. What if I told you that you was created as a bonus? One was born and one was created. One is real, one is not. One is used to deceive the other. Yes, I am really serious. Now that I have said all of this and thrown in a little curveball just to confuse you just a little, there is some evidence how tricky the whole thing really is. When you, the living soul, were first born into this world, the hospital convinced your parents to create a birth certificate or a certificate of live birth as the state's evidence of your arrival. That certificate of live birth institutes the application for Social Security benefits over the life of that new human being via the use of the SS5 form, of course. The new Social Security account does a couple things. It creates a new Social Security number, it creates a Department of Treasury account, and it creates the second U. A new entity is created. This new entity is your name, of course, but it's all capital letters. And at this point, it's probably important just to explain to you that you are not a person. You have a person, and that person is your name spelled in the same way. This newly created fiction, which acts as a corporation, is there to serve as your token to play in the game of commerce over the course of your life. This is very much like the game of Monopoly. Your name in all capital letters is your game piece, shielding the real you from any trouble that you might get into out there in the commerce world. I know this sounds crazy. It does, right? But no, go look at your driver's license. How is your name spelled? Have you ever really noticed that? Like, go look at your social security card or go look at your credit cards or your bank statement or your marriage license or your bank card or any bills that you get from any corporations claiming that you owe them any type of debt or any type of correspondence that you might receive from the IRS, the court systems, etc. The only problem with this situation is that you were never told about this whole setup. You were convinced your entire life that the name that so closely resembles your own, except for it's all capital letters, is used actually as you when it's not. The original purpose of this legal fiction was to indemnify the real you from any commercial liabilities, such as an LLC. An LLC does the same thing. However, we have all been deceived out of this truth for many years for the purpose of defrauding our rights, our liberties, and our prosperity, which has been really frustrating. See, by not realizing that this other you exists out there, every time you see your name spelled out that way, you assume it's you and that you must account for it as if it was. Well, the opposite is true. When you look at your driver's license, it always says your name next to a picture of your face. It's difficult to realize that you have been tricked at the highest levels. Your safeguard from personally guaranteeing commercial liability has been withheld from you. The system has gotten away and gotten out of control over the past many years. And it's gotten this way because of this systematic suppression with this fundamentally important information that has been withheld, of course. And the only entities any corporation out there can interact, govern, communicate, preside, fine, gain jurisdiction, legislate, or rule over is another corporation. A corporation has literally no control in influence over any human being without consent. Your all capital letters name is your token. That's your game piece. That's your corporation to use to interact in commerce with other corporations in the world. But when you use those corporations to start to really interact back with them, claiming that you owe them XYZ, then you have to do XYZ or you're out of compliance with XYZ, etc. That's when things start to get difficult. However, there is another you who is out there to protect you, but it doesn't come close to doing so when you don't know the other you exists. If you were to go to court for a traffic ticket, the judge calls your name. You assume he or she is talking to you, the real live human being you. But you don't see the docket. They're reading from a list of names and addresses in all capital letters. That judge is calling the other you up to answer for this allegation. And that court that you're in, that judge represents a corporation itself and has to interact with that name, that all caps name, of course, in order to do business. The only trouble is once you stand up and say you're there, you unwillingly created this verbal contract with the court or the corporation, instantly creating this joint agreement between you and the court. And at that moment in time, for all intents and all purposes, you've consented, even though unknowingly, with the realms and the jurisdictions of that corporation. You instantly consent to waive the protection of the commercial liability of the second you. And in lieu of that, you become personally liable. That's why the judge in that court can then put the real you in jail. You just threw away your token in that circumstance. However, if you only knew the corporation would never be able to get the jurisdiction it needs to preside over that commercial matter. It just have to go away, right? But this also extends to other corporations and other commercial matters as well. That's why your all caps name is used in so many areas. Another difficult aspect of this is that not all corporations are easy to identify as others. Like it's easy to spot AT&T and Comcast or Google or Experian, like any of those, like we can spot those with no problem. It's little and more difficult to identify the United States or the District Court of California or the City of New York as corporations. Like similarly, like these are just areas that you've informally attributed as global interactions or global lands that you know, that you turn to go to. Like you can travel to New York. You don't know New York as a corporation. Okay. And then not to mention the second U, there is interaction with that, with the corporations, which operate commercially in commerce. Without the second U, all commercial liability you might incur out in the world becomes personally guaranteed by the real you. That can only happen with your knowing and unknowing consent. But why would you ever knowingly want to waive the protection of your game piece? In reality, you never would, which is why this knowledge has been kept from the public eyes. Courts and corporations all know this. By the way, the major excuse has been because it's always been you and I and everybody else are sovereign entities historically responsible for the systems being set up the way they are. Presumed to know this is something that is actually meant to work. Meanwhile, good folks all over the years have been waiving rights, liberties, and prosperity in the name of doing things the way they are taught to and thought they were supposed to do. And all of this is based on one very big, long lie. It's based off of the things that we have been taught in schools, how we were subject to know how certain things work in the real world. And if you drive this way, you might be ticketed or so forth. However, your girl, Lala Davi, is here to let you know you got some remedies. I'm about to tell you how some of these game pieces will work in your behalf. So listen up. So I would really recommend discharging your family's major assets first, such as the houses, the cars, the boathouse, things like that, etc. The cabin, of course, your vacation home out in the Hamptons, you need to discharge that as well. And then you can use those to acquire new equity lines of credit that you can only constantly discharge over and over again. The name of the game is really building your credit, and you have to really acquire new assets and discharge them with your treasury bond, of course. You have to use this new digital lawful money to acquire tangible assets, of course. And if you are one of those secured party creditors, or if you have like a secure credit card and one of those providers takes your secured card or actually close that secured card account, then I need to let you know that you have no worries because the bank still has to return your original asset since your previous obligation with that company was lawfully discharged and settled according to the HJR 192. They could and only keep your money if you never return the funds to their institution, but that's not the case. You properly perfected the administration process, so you're free and clear at that point. However, I do not recommend anyone to try to attempt to discharge a mortgage or an automobile if you haven't properly filed the UCC financing statement. And this is just something that's going to keep you protected. The UCC financing statement is literally a public financing statement that shows a lien of you transferring the property from the debt from the creditor to you, the creditor, and the debtor. And once that is approved by the Attorney General, it is public. That is public information. And this makes it a lot harder for these greedy creditors to foreclose on your property or try to take your vehicle. So just keep in mind that when you're going through the administrative process and doing the debt collection letters, you should almost stop immediately after the first package. And each bill of exchange only roughly takes about 3 months to mature with the IRS. And then it successfully is processed with your transaction. So as long as you're patient along this process, then all those things can continuously work out in your favor. However, you do not want to get in the habit where you just start dropping the ball like, oh, they're about to start paying my bills tomorrow, because it absolutely takes time. So give it some time and then pat yourself on the back a little bit later, just knowing that you have completed and successful administrative process. And during this process, it's important to remember that you are protected by your state's consumer protection laws for sending out certified return receipts to any collection company that you're disputing debt for. Then if the collection company does anything such as cause you to collect on a debt, sending a billing statement or anything like that, after your proper notice of entitlement of rights and dispute of alleged debt, then each act is in violation of consumer laws and will definitely warrant an amount of payment from them. The Fed's FDCA, the Fair Debt Collection Act, allows up to $1,000 per violation for the acts after receiving your proper notice of dispute of that debt. So with that being said, if they respond back in the first 14 days, claiming your correspondent was some type of fraudulent letter or fraudulent material, you can then start collecting evidence and put that conversation on recording if you choose to. If you want to go through suit in the future, you can go ahead and start collecting your data material for that suit. And if they do, you can use all this information against them in the court of law, signed and sealed by a notary. Of course, you need everything to be signed by a notary. You need somebody to witness this for you, right? Yes. So sometimes when you call it in, they'll send you directly to some type of executive office or someone that's going to discharge the matter right over the phone, just like that, right? Okay. Regardless of even after that conversation, you mail in a notice of demand to validate the debt claim. And I do have some templates on that if you want to get more into details on how to do that. Just follow up with me and I'll be more than happy to show you the administrative process. However, you're going to follow up with the proper paperwork in the administrative process to properly cover your tracks. Again, this is all about what you can prove and your personal execution. So you first need to be in position to put your creditors or those so-called creditors on blast. Once you put your creditors in position and you put yourself in position, you position yourself to be the creditor. I understand that some had a question about how long does the process actually take. And I just want to let you know that you should always continue to send your marked up billing presentments to the IRS month after month on a consistent and consecutive basis until you've gotten out of debt. One of the mistakes that I see most people making is only submitting one process and assuming that's all it's going to take. And then they typically stop and then wonder why they're still in debt. Well, you don't really win one fight with one punch. So you have to be prepared to send out a few packages, a new package to the IRS every 3 to 5 weeks, depending on your debt load and how long it takes for them to basically submit the set off. With that being said, the average amount of time typically takes for the claims to go through is a 3 to 4 month process at the earliest. Doesn't really seem to be any rhyme or any type of rhythm why some people get their debt set off a lot sooner than others, but it's just likely to do with the volume as far as how the mail is being received at the IRS and how they're doing their processes. However, I would like to say with the proper faith and due diligence, you will be debt-free as well. Whenever you decide to submit a payment for presentment or to pay a bill in any sort of way, shape, form, or fashion, you want to make sure that it is endorsed properly, and you have to make sure that it is also sent to the proper channels, to the proper departments, of course. You want to make sure that it reach the person that is designated to reach to be properly discharged or closed out and settled for you. I see a lot of the times people are sending discharge packages all over the place, 10 different addresses, and none of them are the proper address. So those letters tend to get thrown away because they don't know who to forward it to, especially if you didn't know who to forward the information to. So you want to make sure that you're forwarding it to the proper channels and the proper departments. And then you can consider it as being set off, discharged, satisfied, settled, or etc. They all mean the same thing in this case. Like your copy of your record of each and every endorsement presentment sent to the IRS provides you with a solid case to any corporation which may continue to try to force claim of debt upon you. So making sure that you're taking an extra step to provide and make copies is a very good decision. Doing so also helps you to keep track of what's been sent and when it's been sent. You should also get in the habit of sending multiple billing statements in one package. Shipping things can get a little bit costly. So if you don't want those extra expenses or those spikes in shipping charges and things of that nature, then go ahead and package everything up in just one sitting if you can. And keep your records on hand as well, because that's going to be vital for you in the long run. I feel as though most of the time when we're sending out these presentments, we feel as though, hey, this packet going to be thick as a thieves. Like, it's going to be thicker than Snickerbots. Like, it's thick. It's getting thick in here with these bills. That's fine. It's compliance. It's in compliance. So just send it out and just wait for it to mature from there. As long as you're using large envelopes that allow you to fit more into one mailing, then you don't have to worry about folding and stuffing the paperwork down to fit into a tight envelope. It really does help, and it looks really clean when you do it this way. So other than that, making sure that you have them properly endorsed in a large packet, preferably the brown manila envelopes is what I use. But you can send whatever you have available, but you really shouldn't be sending anything else, or you shouldn't really need to. Keep in mind when you're sending the cover letters, it isn't really necessary, but it's really nice to have some type of direction as to where the contents of the package is taking you. So it will definitely have a good impact on what's to follow behind on that content. And we're always dealing with other human beings, so treating them good is always a good idea. Having some type of acknowledgement and respect can go a long way when you're communicating. So although we're in a position of power, we don't have to use that power to over-position ourselves over someone else to force them into doing what we need them to do. When you get to the post office, you want to make sure that you're sending all of your correspondence out via certified mail with hard return receipt. You should have the green copy for return receipt. And you need to make sure that box is checked and you receive your request. However, this isn't really a necessity and is also just a additional expense that you might not want to incur. However, I like to feel comfortable knowing that my package has been received and you acknowledge receipt of my package. It's totally up to you, your discretion. By all means, just use a healthy envelope and, properly seal it, of course. It might be anywhere between $8 to $10, depending on where you're located. So just keep that price in mind. But the benefits of having certified mail with the return receipt requested is just a small expense. But it's definitely really good for record keeping should you ever need to reference that tracking information back at a later date. I understand that a lot of people want to know, why do we send so many correspondence to the IRS? And I am here to let you know that the IRS is much more than just a taxing authority. The IRS really acts as the world's largest and most accurate accounting firm that we have. And when used correctly, from the position of power that you truly have, the IRS can and will act as the most thorough and successful third-party debt collector possible. In your case, of course, is to satisfy these so-called debts and these claims that have been set against you. We send everything through the IRS because they're the agency that we can rely on to make sure that we direct what is to get paid actually gets paid. The IRS is a large functioning body of the International Monetary Fund, and as part of its directive is to facilitate just this type of thing. So the IRS allows us to enforce the administrative process and to provide these financial processes that have been mandated by the federal government, the Federal Reserve, and the Uniform Commercial Code. But you have to remember that having a working understanding of the IRS is not necessarily to get rid of your debt. When you were born, your parents formed your birth. Like, you had a birth and a birth certificate was created. And that certificate of live birth, which was the genesis for your SS5 Social Security application, that application was created amongst other things on your Social Security account. That account representing you, when accessed through the right channels in the right ways, has unlimited credit, which you can set off any debt. Please do remember that since the government took away the gold and silver, which basically acted as our functional ability to pay for everything, and since then, we've only had essentially this play money to use ever since then, and debts constantly and organically occurred, which of the government agreed to pay, whether they be public or private. Those debts are paid through the IRS out of your account at the Department of Treasury. So on all of our remittance coupons, we use such information to provide that value back in that amount to the United States Treasury, which then pays whatever corporation is claiming as the debt with that draft for payment. And to that corporation, it satisfies their debt because it comes to them in the form of a check or electronic draft. But for us, this is satisfying because the debt was settled in full without needing our hard work and expending energy to earn enough cash to pay these promissory notes to pay this off, and using these traditional means just to pay something using another instrument of debt just to try to pay off a debt. So it's a win-win. The Department of Treasury houses your unlimited credit account. We have come to a very short commercial break paid for by our lovely sponsors, so don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this message.
Yeah, what up, ATL? Look, you ballin', you bad and bougie with bad credit. That's most of y'all. But look, man, that's why y'all need to call my people at Exchange Credit Repair. That's right, Exchange Credit Repair will help you squad them inquiries, get rid of them collections, and bankruptcy. They'll even take child support off. I didn't even know they put child support on credit. Woo-wee! And boost your credit score. Let's get that credit score where you want so you can go get what you want. And if you mention Street 945, you get a 35% discount. Hein? So call my people right now at 678-420-5553, 678-420-5553, or visit my people at exchangecreditrepair.info. Exchange Credit Repair is a credit counseling business with experienced credit repair experts standing by to assist you right now. When I made this deal with them, I said, look here, you ain't got to pay me for the commercial. Just put my credit score where I want so I can go get what I want. When I went to them, they treated me like family. My privacy was all the way respected. They quick to fight for a client's right with the Bureau of Credit, creditors, and debt collectors. Conveniently located at 1 West Court Square in Decatur. Tell them Shout sent you.
The knowledge is spreading fast. So remember that the knowledge without action is pretty much useless. Start looking at your mail differently. Start noticing all the different places you see your name in all capital letters, and start piecing together why the places that do that. What do they all have in common? You might find that it's interesting to go to the bank and try a little exercise. You might have a relationship with the teller, and you'll tend to see this teller every week. So you can just ask that teller to type your name in, or anything for that matter, and anything but all capital letters in a computer. Of course, they'll tap the caps lock anyway, and then they'll look in amazement like, oh, they might say, I've never noticed that before, but they won't be able to type it in regularly or only in the proper casing. They can only type it in capital letters. And now you know the reason why. But remember, everyday people like the old you aren't aware of this. Most police officers really don't even understand this either. And most employees of the court systems really don't know about this. They need their eyes opened as well, just like you've needed to have your eyes opened or wake up at some point. And there's a tremendous amount of power in doing just that. I have another little exercise for you. Reach in your pocket and pull out some money, $1 bill, $5 bill, whatever it is, whatever you have. Look at it really good and read this money. This note is a legal tender for all debts, public and private. As you may know, the U.S. Constitution, the only money is gold and silver. And that's stated in the Constitution, starting in 1933 and up. And through the 1960s, gold and silver, for the most part, was removed out of the circulation. And the note is tendering the promise to pay when real money is available. Being able to eliminate your debt has been allowed and is happening thanks to the two of yous. It might be a good idea to order a certified copy of your birth certificate if you don't have it, but there are some companies online that make it really easy for you to obtain that if you're looking to do so. That certificate of live birth that was created, the second you in the first place, is going to be a good place for you to basically start. And that's where it all began anyway. You'll find it very interesting that the certified copy of your certificate of live birth is printed on American banknote paper that is company paper, and it feels very much like money. So this is something that you definitely want to look into because it helps you understand how and why the Department of Treasury account funds all of your debts or issue them for being set off. So definitely look more into that. There are a lot of videos online that goes in depth. I will attach some of the ones that I know into the bottom of this description, just so you guys can go and just educate yourselves on this full process and get more knowledge. You'll also find it very interesting that your birth certificate in reality is the defendant, the taxpayer, the account holder, the owner, the driver, the citizen, etc. It's not you, and was it never intended to be you. It's your token. And you must change your way of thinking in order to understand that there are two of you in this world, the one that was born and the one that was created. You aren't the person. You have a person. And at any time you need to be reminded of that, just wave your birth certificate around. Look at your driver's license. Look at your mail. You will always be protected from the monstrous yet necessary commercial world unless or until you consent to waive those rights or liberties and prosperity by rejoining the real you with the fictitious commercial entity provided to you in your name at birth. There are two of you, and the real you needs to wake up, understand, and just spread the word. Be prepared to achieve your goal. Be prepared to get out of debt. It can be surprising to just live in a world where you're free of it. And you may find that it takes some time to get used to, or you might just decide to stay in debt to some degree. The point is, the debtor's way of life is the debtor's way of thinking. The debtor's way of doing things has perhaps been the way you have been for quite some time now. Changing things for the better for yourself and for others is going to take some continuous motivation and some effort. And with that being said, I understand that you may have to read more or study more just to get a better visual of this full practice. But nonetheless, that's what the professionals are here for. If you find yourself needing questions or having anything that you need help with, there are people that are willing to assist. I, again, will include all links below. Grab them as you will, and feel free to reach out to those professionals that are delegated and here to assist you. We are coming to the end of the show, and I really hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate to share them. And if you have any additional advice, we'd definitely love to hear it over at goaxlala.com. We're always open and appreciative to any of our incredible listeners and always open to feedback. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button as you don't want to miss out on any exciting content coming your way. You can download the episodes by clicking on the arrow at the very top of the screen and saving this episode for easily listening. Also, I want to give much love and send big thanks for tuning into No, But Seriously, Let Me Explain. I am your phenomenal host, Lala Davi, and you know I got all the sauce. I'll see you again next week with more content for you. So until then, stay bold, beautiful, and brilliant. Love ya.